Yes, good night, Trinidad and Tobago. Good night, the workers of Trinidad and Tobago. Michael Anisette in the house. As we rally, as we build unity, as we build strength for our fight and our rights for decent wages, as we continue to mobilize and organize for Faizabad, I thought it fit that I should do this podcast before I travel to Geneva to attend the ILO ILC 110 conference in Geneva. I think it was necessary to have this conversation with you, the workers and the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of disinformation, and attempts to instill fear into people's minds so that politicians and the leaders of the country, those who are in charge of governance, will have their own way without any regard whatsoever for the rights of workers or the people and our women folk. We believe strongly in NATUC that no society can progress if our women folks are not paid decent and living wages. And our hearts bleed in NATUC for those workers at MTS and for all the women folk who have found themselves in a situation where their wages cannot meet their daily commitment and their responsibility to their children and their household. And therefore they find themselves in a situation of almost becoming beggars in Trinidad and Tobago. And we believe in the National Trade Union Center that a government is about people. A government is not only about balancing the books. A government is about running the country so that the people who produce the wealth, the people who are the productive forces, which are the workers, can get their just due in terms of wages, in terms of terms and conditions of employment. Decent and living wages must be a fundamental pillar of any democratic society and any society that speaks to growing a society in an equal way. Social justice is a fundamental issue, brothers and sisters, people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I ask you the question today, whether you are satisfied that our society is equal, whether you are satisfied that there is social justice in our society, whether you are satisfied with the 4% that was offered over the 6 years period by this government, but more importantly, were you satisfied with an institution that was set up for fair play and justice? If that institution has a right to subtly use threats to workers and say, well, if you don't take the 4% over the 6 years, I can use my authority and extend the collective bargaining period for 10 years. And when that is done, workers are forced to run and accept the 4%. And that is not a victory, as the CPO will want us to believe. And when the CPO goes to the public and says that there in other countries there were wage freezes, one has to understand, what is a wage freeze? A wage freeze is a depression of wages and the government committed policy of not increasing wages. And if we have a situation where the academic institution of Cipriani College have not gotten a wage increase from since, listen to me, 2007. And if we have a situation where workers, government and daily rated workers haven't received wages as much as 9 and 12 years, increase in wages, isn't that a wage freeze also? So let us not play with our words and let us call out the CPO for the truth. Let us begin to understand that fear has no place in negotiations, or fear has no place in building a modern society. And this is the issue that we are faced with. While the government complains as an employer that there is no money, one has to understand that if an economy is on the decline, is the whole economy suffers rather. But having said that, are you aware that the private sector, yes, the private sector, would have paid wages of 9 and 12% over the very said period, for 3-year periods, for their employees? So the question that you have to ask yourself, workers and the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the voiceless, the depressed communities, how in a society where the economy is about people, that the private sector can find money to pay 9% over a 3-year, 12% over a 3-year period, but this government is paying 4% over a 6-year period under threats that if you don't accept it, you will have to accept 4% over a 10-year period. Ask yourself that question, and I want you to ask yourself that question. Is it that the government is not, as a government, managing the finances properly? Is it that this government sees wage and salary increases for their employees as not important? Is it that workers who produce the wealth, who go and work for the public service, the police, the fire service, the people on the port, the people at IMA, the people at MTS, PTS, WASA, daily rated workers, is it that their standard of living is not important to this government? How do you justify in a modern society? How do you look at the question of time value of money, where we are now getting an increase after 9 and 12 years in some instances, and we are being offered 4% over that period, and no consideration is given whatsoever for the time value of money? What does that mean? That if I had that money in 2008, like the academic staff of Cipriani College, that money would have had much more value to me. I would have been able to purchase and spend much more money than if I get that same money 10 years or 9 years or 12 years after. That's an economic fact, and they are not speaking about that. So then I think it is necessary that we have that conversation, and therefore I'm putting the workers on notice. I am disappointed in the sense that there are people who are prattling the government 4%. There are threats that if you get your back pay, you will lose your work. And I say that is just fear mongering. But the only thing that you have to fear about fear is fear. Because fear is a mental thing. And if you don't have fear, and if you understand your innate powers, and if you understand that I am because you are, you'll begin to understand that collectively, as a people, we could stand up and demand what is right for us as a people. The time has come where we must go to Faizabad, not only for marching for a day, but to take decisions and to continue our concerted efforts to ensure that social justice is extended to each and every one of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. That's a government. What is a government? A government is about the people, for the people. And if the people are excluded from government decisions and policies, if we are not engaged in discussions, if the government enters into non-disclosure agreements with foreign governments and we do not know how our money, which is our taxpayers' money, how the money is being spent, what kind of democracy are we talking about, brothers and sisters? Those are the issues, you know. And I want to make a fundamental point here. There can be no economy without people. Let me repeat it. Comrades, brothers and sisters, there can be no economy without people. If there isn't anyone who has the wherewithal all in terms of proper and decent wages and salary to buy the goods and services that the business community produce, well, then the economy is going to end up in an economic precipice. That's a reality. So that when the government attempts to make it appear that there isn't money, and when you look at some of the projects that the government is going, we ask ourselves the question in the National Trade Union Center, which one is better? Wages, where workers will spend within the economy, or to build a highway to Togo? Which one is more productive in terms of Trinidad and Tobago and keeping the economy going? Is it that the big mega projects is important for whatever reason, as opposed to workers' rights to survive and to live in our society? And each and every one of us know what I'm speaking of. Go in the grocery, go in the market. Look at the prices 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and look at the cost that you have to pay and the increases in those prices and the goods that you consume. Look at your household income and see what is happening to our families, our children, our young, our single women in our society as a consequence of a failed policy which fails to put people first in terms of our economic development and reality. So I'm saying that come June 19th, you got to be there in Faisabad, each and every one of you. Bring your children, bring your auntie, bring your nene, bring your granny, because this is about changing our society for a better society. And let us begin to understand as a people, brothers and sisters, that no politician can build a society. Let us begin to understand that for any society to develop, you must have a striving middle class. You must have a society where equality and justice and fairness is the fundamental principles that we operate under. We must have a society where good governance, where ethical behavior in all institutions become part of our society. We must have a society where women, single parents, all right, where our youths are treated and are empowered to use their innate knowledge, creativity in order to grow the society. At my next conversation, we'll start to talk about crime and why crime will continue in Trinidad and Tobago. Because if you do not deal with the root cause of crime, well then you could have how many commission of inquiries, you could have how many commissioners from over the Caribbean meeting, it wouldn't solve crime. Crime is a mirror. Crime is like the man in the mirror. Crime is about who we are as a people and who we are as a society. Crime has nothing to do with Laventille, because there is all kinds of crimes. Blue collar crime, which we know much about, and white collar crime. But the question that you have to ask, who paying for the cocaine? Who paying for the guns in Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm sure it's not the young black men in Laventille or in Gonzales or in Point Forte. We all know that. And the question is, brothers and sisters, why we as a people have to pay the ultimate price. Who is bringing in the guns and the ammunition It's not that young man in Laventille. You know what's the price of a gun? You know what's the price of ammunition? You know what's the price to bring in drugs within this country and you see as a transshipment point? Do you understand what is happening within our society? But we have lost our spirituality. We have lost our virtuousness. We are now on an instantaneous society where vanity, where cars, where houses, 6 houses in one house, and we catching our nenen to get proper transport to take our children to school. That is the society that we are living in. And we have to demand changes. We can be the agent of those changes. Don't let them fool you. We the workers, we the trade union movement, we the depressed, we, this society. And let me end by saying, we need to start to seriously look at gender-based violence. We need to seriously begin to understand that within our spirituality, that women are important to this society, and they cannot be seen as an object to be used by those who have money for their whims and fancies. We have to stand up against that. And we within the labor movement, we our men, must start to champion that cause to protect our women and our children in this society. Yes, we can build a better society, but we have to do it collectively, and we have to speak truth to power, and we must be able to hold all leaders, regardless of where they are, accountable for their actions. Don't judge people by what they say. Judge people by their action. Judge people by how they treat their women folk and their children, how they treat the elders within a society. That is the signal of the kind of society that you have. And we have to demand respect for our elders, our women folk, and our children. I am cutting out now. I will be back in time for Labor Day, but I thought it important because I got that feeling, I got that spirit to talk to you all tonight. And I hope that you digest what I say. And remember that I am because you are, and you are because I am. And there is nothing to fear in this world. We are all one. We are all part of this world. And as long as we continue our spiritual journey, as long as we begin to understand the role of our ancestor mothers and fathers and our history, we will succeed, brothers and sisters. It's only we can determine the kind of society we want. It's only we can determine our agenda. It must not be left to no politicians or no other institution. The community must be empowered to make decisions in the best interest of the community. No politician has ever and will ever act in your interest, given the political system that we operate, where capital trumps everything. Capital, yes, and capital is not about people. We are saying people must be placed first, and our economic policies must be people-centered. And if it's not people-centered, you will get an ideology where government is happy and comfortable in offering you, workers, 4% over a 6-year period, notwithstanding the fact that the cost of living would have risen exponentially until a level where we are barely surviving, and the 4% cannot cut it. We are all aware of that. So if I cannot feed my children, if I don't have the ability to send children to school, if I have to make the decision whether to send my child to school or to buy food, we know we're in dire straits, and therefore we need to look carefully and see if the government is serious about the society, who is you and I. And I will end by saying again, no society can progress if the women folks are paid wages that is not living, that is not decent, if our women folks are not respected, if you do not uphold their dignity and their rights as human beings. And that extends to all workers in Trinidad and Tobago. We must respect workers and the people, and more importantly, those elders and the youths. They are very important as we build a new society where social justice becomes critical and important in developing a new society for everyone and not for a few. Thank you. I am out. Be there June the 19th. Love you all. Right, may the Divine Master continue to guide us and to bless us. May our ancestors, mothers and fathers continue to guide us. And when they come to destroy us with their wickedness, let them know that we are children of the Son, so they cannot destroy us. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Love you all. Looking forward to seeing you all on June the 19th, where Faisal, be there. Come and make a statement and be counted. Time out. One love.